Morning, folks. Hope you're doing well. It's hot here in countryside Illinois. It's been hot for at least a week, if not more. A little bit of relief has come through, but not much. And I'm very mindful of the people who aren't able to get to cooling centers or have air conditioning in their apartments or homes or whatever. I'm very mindful of that. But the reason this little particular rant that I want to lay on you today has to do with several memories and some recent experiences and questions that I have posed to myself. This morning I had to go up to the local library to do a bit of PDF generation. And on my way up there, it occurred to me, the Port Williams Library in Port Williams, Nova Scotia, was the closest library that was near to my place in Sheffield Mills, Nova Scotia. And that place was run back in the day by a wonderfully kind little old lady named Mrs. Woodworth. And I expect she'd probably been there for years, and she was always just so friendly, and always had books that we could take home and borrow and read and bring back. But it occurred to me this morning on my way up to the countryside library, or the LaGrange library, actually, that Woodworth is a family name that is associated with my father's family. In that his middle name was Woodworth, and Burton Woodworth Bowlby, and got myself thinking, I wonder if there might be some kind of connection between my father, Burton Woodworth Bowlby, and Mrs. Woodworth of the Port Williams Library. And I thought, that would be a neat little thing to work on a little bit when I've got a spare moment every now and again this summer, just to find stuff out and to go through the process of trying to find out information. And that sort of got me thinking about other times I've had to go digging around for information. And I recalled the first time I went to the stacks, the graduate stacks, at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign's main library. And you walk down into these what basically are catacombs, and just unending miles of books and other types of publications that just go on for miles and miles and miles of floors. And you get a chance to, if you're like me, you're looking for music reviews in Paris from the 1920s, and in Berlin in the 1920s, Vienna in the 1920s. You go down there, and you actually can pick up like paper copies of these things, and take these these huge books, put them down on a desk, and the paper crumbles in your fingers as you turn through the pages. But it's that kind of experience where you go and you have to dig around in old sources and to find information. And part of the fun, I think, part of the real fun was having to go there several times and find stuff. So it's the digging around, and I would have had no other way at that point. It's the early 80s, late 80s, early 90s of the previous century. There was no other way I could have gotten a hold of these things. And it was really cool finding this stuff, but also part of the fun was just the act of having to go somewhere and having to go down. I'd never been in the stacks before, and to this day, whenever I get down to the University of Illinois, I try very hard to get down into the stacks just to appreciate just how much information there is there, and how much information that I will never know. Will never, ever know. And it's the search for these things are part of it. And I'm thinking, so that's sort of the first little bit. Second little bit is I've recently come across some young people who were possibly thinking about coming along, but maybe studying some kind of musical topic with me. Now, I'm not going to say names. No, I'm not, but I'm just describing the situation where, they were telling me something they were interested in, et cetera, and I wrote an email back to their mother. The guy, the guy just turned 16. I think he's about to be a senior in high school. Anyway, so 16, 17. So I wrote back to his mom, just sort of describing some of the things that I try to get him to do. The guy is particularly interested in progressive rock. And I thought, it would be really neat for him to go to some library somewhere and pull down a copy of the New Grove's Dictionary of Music and Musicians and thumb through that article on prog rock. And I mentioned a couple of other things that I would suggest doing with him. And I essentially got the reply, both from his mother and from him, more or less directly, well, I don't want to have to sort through anything that I can't access on my computer. So anything that you can't access is on your computer, you're just not interested in looking for. Okay, well, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff. And I would rather think that chances are that he probably could access the article from the New Grove's Dictionary of Music and Musicians on his computer. But and I've also had a couple of other students over the years do that. Well, why do I have to do that? The technology will do it for me. And thinking to myself, dudettes, you're missing half the fun. You're missing. You don't get a chance to go. You don't get a chance to go through the process of chasing facts down, and to have to go somewhere and to wait and to be really impressed with just how efficient the Swiss are in responding to any kind of correspondence I sent them, at least. I mean, the Swiss are just incredible, or at least were incredibly organized. Like, if I sent them a letter on like Wednesday of one week, I'd probably have their reply in my physical mailbox in Champaign, like maybe even as little as less than a week later. So that kind of experience, I think, is part of the process. Part of the trying to hunt stuff down, tracking down the details, doing what one of my other musicology professors said, doing the detective work, finding the stuff out, instead of having to sit there on your, well, here it is right here on my computer. Yeah, well, maybe it is, and I suppose that's one way of finding it. But, well, among other things, think of the exercise that you could have gotten walking to a library. Think of the exercise you get picking up an old book. Think of the exercise, exercise, we can't have that. We can do it all on the computer. Yeah, I find that bothersome. In fact, quite disturbing that technology has really, in many senses, made people, just too damn lazy, if you'll pardon the expression, too lazy to do a little bit of legwork. A little bit of legwork's not going to hurt you. How do I know that if I say, okay, fella, do you ever heard of the prog rock group called If? And have you ever heard their tune Fibonacci's Number? Oh, you haven't heard that? Oh, here, take this here. Here. And I probably would have blown his mind if I'd taken an LP copy of that and put it on a turntable and played it for him. But you can get it on the web. Yeah, well, maybe you can get it on the web. You can also get it here. And you also get an idea of watching somebody work an old record player. Right? This is how things work back in the unenlightened times. Which essentially means back before this guy, whoever it is, was in love with technology. They happen to be hatched. Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of stuff on the web. There's a lot of really cool stuff. I use it all the time. I use it every day practically. But, chances are, can we really, even now, can we really sort of assume that everything is on the web? Everything. Everything's on the web. Well, maybe. Maybe not. Wouldn't it be nice to have all the information that you can, all the facts in front of you, instead of going off half-cocked with ignorance, largely due to the fact that you're of technological ethnocentrism. Well, I don't want to do that because that's not new and that's not up to date and I don't have that right here. Yeah. Lazy. Technological ethnocentrism just contributes to ignorance. And it's something I think that we need to be on the lookout for and to encourage our students or anybody, really, any young person or any person the situation fits, encourage them to try to find all the sources, all the information, all the facts. And just getting the facts, no matter how you get them. The getting it is half the fun. In fact, more than half the fun. Anyway, so that's a little blurb, rant kind of thing. And I, once again, will want to lift up this Mrs. Woodworth's again to you as a really wonderful source of information in my early years, and very much in a very real way fostered my love of learning and education, even though we had to drive somewhere to get there, even though we had to pick up a physical book and look at it, even though we had to bring it home before we could read it. Yeah, but that's half the fun. Yeah, interesting. All right, that's it for today. My second Bach Chorale thing will be up fairly soon, so watch for that. And until then, I will wish you good luck, good hunting, and be well, do good work, as Garrison Keillor would say, and stay in touch. Bye for now.